and sort of, the governance issues associated with it. They've done that on a range of things.
Thank you. General Barrier, we had General Cavoli here, who's doing a superb job, and he indicated that Russia remains a formidable force despite their significant losses in personnel in Ukraine, because the air, maritime, space, cyber, and strategic forces have not really been committed to that effort. What's DIA's assessment of Russia's capacity?
Very, very similar. Still an existential threat with a nuclear arsenal that they have. General Cavoli is correct that their strategic forces have largely been untested here, and it's still formidable.
So that the significant redistribution of forces out of Europe would still be a challenge because of their existing capacities?
I think from a deterrence standpoint, Russia fears strength, and so even though their ground forces are degraded right now, they will quickly build those back.
Thank you. And Director Haynes, as I said in my statement, the intelligence community has done some remarkable work with respect to Russia and Ukraine by exposing activities the Russians were contemplating before they could do it, not only embarrassing them, but in many cases frustrating their ability to do it. Are we ready to use that same approach to other adversaries, such as China, in terms of strategically using intelligence to disrupt their operations?
Thank you, sir. I think we can talk about this also in closed session a bit more, but as a general matter, we have learned some techniques and mechanisms that will not be forgotten coming out of the conflict with Ukraine that I think we can deploy in other scenarios, which have allowed us to do more sharing and downgrading of information, kind of working as a team across the IC to try to preserve sources and methods in that process. And I think we will look to do that, but I think it will be more challenging in different areas depending on what those sources and methods are and how we can manage that concern as we move forward.
Just quickly for both of you, we've had this incident with the Air National Guardsman Texera years before that, Snowden, so this is not really new. We thought and we think every time this happens, we put in place things like keystroke logging, more restricted controls, but we're still having problems. So just quickly, Director Haynes, what can we do to make sure we have more appropriate controls?
Yeah, thank you, sir. It's been absolutely extremely frustrating, obviously, and demoralizing for folks in the intelligence community who work so hard, frankly, to put together the kind of intelligence that then gets disclosed in leaks, and the damage that it does to our national security is just unacceptable on every level, obviously, and I appreciate the support. I think what I can tell you at this stage is only an interim answer because we are still getting the information from the investigation as to what exactly happened, and to understand that is obviously then to have greater confidence in saying that the things that we're doing are going to make a difference to ensure that this doesn't happen again. And right now, what we are doing is looking to ensure that we, in fact, have the best, user activity monitoring, other techniques that we use, that we are, again, scrubbing and reviewing our processes for ensuring that there is only information provided on a need-to-know basis, that when there is user privileges, that they are appropriately granted, that we have additional, controls around these issues, and we can obviously talk about this more in closed session.
Senator Wicker, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Haynes, I don't want to get into a long discussion about the debt limit, but it is a fact, is it not, that the House of Representatives has passed a bill that would raise the debt limit. If it were passed by the Senate and signed into law by the President, a default would be avoided. That is correct, is it not?
Sir, I will confess that I am not tracking the puts and takes of this, but I absolutely, I'm sure you're right.
I think I am right, and I just wanted to point that out. The House has done its work, and the Senate now needs to pass a bill and get it to the President's desk. But let me ask you this, Director Haynes. The General said since he was a young officer, the threat has changed, the threat has exponentially increased. Do you agree that this is the most complex and dangerous threat environment since World War II? And I'll ask that to both of you. Director Haynes first.
Sure. Thank you, sir. I feel as if you always feel as if the time that you're in is the most complex and most challenging. I do feel that way, but I am a little bit conscious of the sort of cognitive bias that's associated with that. But I think it is, as our annual threat assessment.
Well, this is a very complex and dangerous threat environment, is it not? General, is this the most complex and dangerous threat environment since World War II?
Senator, I believe it is. When you consider the advances in technology, the precision of weapons, the globalization, information, the rise of China, along with what Russia has been up to, and then you consider dangerous regional actors like Iran, North Korea, and the continued threat of violent extremist organizations, it seems like the most complex.
And do you then agree, General, that the authorization bill and the appropriation bills that Congress passes this year should represent acting accordingly to address this greatest threat?
Senator, there is a threat there. I support the president's budget, and I'll just leave it there.
Okay, I think that answer speaks loudly. China gives us a figure, General Barry, about how much they spend. They say $224 billion annually on their military. Do you agree that China spends significantly more than they publicly admit? And what's your best estimate of how much their annual defense spending is?
Senator, there are a number of factors that go into that estimate. I'd be more comfortable in a closed session to discuss that.
And Director Haynes, I guess you don't want to discuss that publicly also. Well, let's then let both of you discuss what this Ukraine war has done to Russia's military capability, not only today, but over the next 10 to 15 years. General?
Number of factors as well, Senator. I think, just the combat losses, and I spoke of this in my opening statement about the new look army. The reorganization that the Russian military took in the early 2000s meant that they would be better, faster, smaller, if you will, from what they were in the Soviet era. That army largely is gone, and they're relying on reserves and reserve equipment, older Soviet era kinds of kit. It's going to take them a while to build back to more advanced kit. The estimates go from 5 to 10 years based on how sanctions affect them and their ability to put technology back into their force. So I think they've had a setback in the ground forces, but still very, very capable in their strategic forces.
Director Haynes, the next 10 to 15 years, based on what has happened to the Russian conventional military capability so far.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree with General Barrier. There's no question, and I think unanimity in the intelligence community, it will take years for the Russians to build back up their ground forces. They've really significantly degraded them, but they nevertheless have, as indicated, strategic force, other forces, and that doesn't mean that they're not a powerful military force.
Okay, well, and let me just say this with regard to my previous question.